Ian Furness is a longtime buddy of mine, although I almost wonder if he remembers me or when we first met. But here's his Twitter bio. On the air, weekdays 1 to 3 p.m. on Sports Radio KJR. The big sports talk blowtorch in Seattle. And he moonlights on Q13 Fox, Seahawks game day reporter. But the former voice of the Thunderbirds, that's where we first met. Ian, how are you, my friend? How you been the last 28 years?
I was just thinking, Rod, it's been, as the kids would say, a minute, right? Since we last spoke, and following you from afar. I used to read the blog religiously, and everything you've been through and accomplished. It's awesome to see you, awesome to hear you. It's cool to be on up in one of my favorite places, Saskatchewan.
Oh, I know you love the hockey up here. And actually, before we jump into the NFL, and Lynch is just chomping at the bit to ask you NFL questions. I was just telling the story the other day. You and I walked around the Communiplex concourse and back in the day, 1993, and you saw those photos of Mike Modano and Dave Manson and Ken Baumgartner. You're like, I'm in the hockey mecca. And I'm like, we are? I don't know. I grew up here. I didn't realize it was that big of a deal. You really enjoyed that Eastern swing with the T-Birds.
I did. I did T-Birds for 2 years. I did the Tri-City Americans for 3 years. So I did a 5-year, as I call it, tour of duty in the Western Hockey League. But my mom was born in Moose Jaw, grew up in the prairies, and then moved to Nelson, British Columbia when she was a teenager. So, and my grandparents are from up there. My grandfather played in the Allen Cup back in the day. So, for me, as a kid in Seattle who has a great appreciation for the game and the history of the game, to go for the very first time to the prairies and to go there. Back then, we traveled, the teams out west went to both the Alberta swing and the Saskatchewan, Manitoba swing. We did that every year. We did 2 Eastern swings, which I think was awesome, especially for the kids and the parents. But yeah, to walk through the buildings there and to see the history, I'll be honest with you, I don't miss the crush can in Moose Jaw. I felt like every night I went there that if something happened good for the team I was broadcasting for, there might be, I might get beat up in the broadcast booth, and wasn't a big fan of the smoke that was billowing up there. Non-smoking meant they hadn't smoked in 10 minutes. But outside of that, it was just a great time of my life. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
I knew you loved it. And by the way, the Crush Can is a parking lot now, which it should be. There's a sports bar there. But the Boone Street Barn in Spokane was no different. And then I just want to end it with the fact that when we went to Seattle in the Rock and Roll Arena, you gave me a tour of that facility. You reciprocated, and it was amazing. Is it still standing in the shadow with the Space Needle?
No, it's sad, man. They turned it into some sort of storage place or like a warm-up area for the symphony or something there. It's sad because square corners, high boards, there's some great stories with guys. Ray Ferraro always tells the great stories because, he's, 5 foot whatever, nothing. You go in the corners there, and unless you're 6'2", you'd get your decapitated if you got hit. And Seattle always had a big team back then. It was the buildings, have just gotten so much better out here, Showware Center in Kent and up in Everett with their building with the silver tips. They're state-of-the-art buildings like a lot of them around the league, but there's something about the character of the old buildings in the Dub that I kind of miss a little bit.
That's why we loved it. Look, I'll come back around on the Kraken, but John we got a football guy here, and he wants to talk some NFL with you, Ian. So, Frenzy, take it away.
Okay, Ian, good to see you. Good to meet you. I've got a pretty good idea of what the best trade would be for the Watson, okay? Trade Watson.
For Watson? Okay. Yeah.
Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson? Which one?
Deshaun Watson to Seattle for Russell Wilson. Wow. And a couple of draft choices. Oh, what the hell? He's a young quarterback, Russell Wilson would be great for that horse manure situation in Houston, eh?
I think, if you're Seattle, that's the only deal that would seem to make sense. The problem is Russell hasn't put Houston on his list of teams that he would go to. He's got a no-trade clause, so he can veto any trade. If that were the case, simplicity-wise, it makes all the sense in the world. Seattle gets a franchise quarterback in return, but I don't think anybody wants to go to Houston, and that's the issue. And, the bigger picture with Russell is I just don't see Seattle trading him, at least this year. The dead cap money, even if they got Watson back, the dead cap money is $39 million. They couldn't even afford Deshaun Watson right now. They'd have to cut half the rest of their roster. So it's a tough situation all the way around. Watson will be traded. It's a matter of to whom. I don't think Wilson will be moved, although, never say never in sports, right, guys?
Well, Ian, for sure, and I'm wondering, that's why I wanted you on and why I asked Clark, let's line this up with Ian. You're in the heart of it. Can you cut through the BS, please, and tell me, if he doesn't want to trade, why is there a list of teams? Makes no sense to us looking from the outside.
It doesn't make sense to us. And I mean, I've been lucky enough to cover Russell since day one, since 2012. And none of us know athletes that well, but I've been around him enough and interviewed him enough one-on-one with the job with Q13 with their TV partner. It's so out of character. I think that's the thing that surprises me. Everything that's going on right now is out of character for him. He is a player and an individual that has done everything in his career based on his image, and trying to make sure he painted this picture of this pristine image of who he is, and everything he's done has been, quote, the right way. And this is just so wrong on every level. He's turned fans against him. Obviously, there's an issue between him and the front office. I think part of it is an ego has gone, out of control. He has the most difficult agent in the NFL to work with. Mark Rodgers, there's no doubt about it, has been a problem for Seattle since day one. Mark Rodgers has baseball clients and one NFL client. And that one NFL client is Russell Wilson. Now, they've been able to come up with 2 contracts, a second and third contract in the NFL with Wilson and Rodgers, but it's been difficult both times. The negotiations have been acrimonious at best. And I think a lot of this is agent driven, but Russell still has the say at the end of the day. And Rod, I mean, it's just out of character. It doesn't make sense. He played awful the last 9 games of the year, the final 8 regular season games and the playoff game. Russell played the worst football of his career. It almost feels like he's looking to blame someone other than himself for that poor play.
How do he and the head coach Pete Carroll get along?
It used to be they got along great, and that was Pete's is probably the best communicator in the NFL. I think it goes back to his days at USC with the Trojans. This guy relates to everyone, whether you're young, old, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, it doesn't matter. Pete Carroll sees no color. He sees no gender. He sees no demographic in terms of age. He is that guy. He has been remarkable in his career in that regard. And so for him to have an issue now with him, the only player he really ever had an issue with before, I think, was Richard Sherman. And I don't even know how bad that was. I mean, Sherman's just one of those guys, strong-willed, smart guy, Stanford. He started tuning out from Pete's stuff, and then he got hurt and they moved on from him. And that was mostly a salary cap issue. The Russell Wilson-Pete Carroll dynamic for to be strained all of a sudden is odd. One of the things that we see, Russell Wilson, I think, wants to be things that maybe he's not. I think he wants to be, Tom Brady. Well, there's one Tom Brady in the history of the NFL. He's not going to win. Russell's not going to win 6 more NFL Super Bowl championships. He wants to be this, up in that same echelon of the great quarterbacks of all time. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's just not a top 5, maybe not even a top 10 quarterback of all time. He thinks if he can throw more volume, more throws volume-wise, that maybe he can get there. It's just so out of character. I think all of us in Seattle, at least, are trying to wrap our arms around it. Guys that have covered the team and covered this team day. You guys know, Rod, you know what it's like. You cover a team day to day. You have a lot better feel for than what the national guys have. I think the national narrative for Russell Wilson is a little bit off. I mean, they kind of missed the boat a wee bit here. I think you can fix this. I don't think you have to trade him, and I don't think they will trade him this year. Never say never, but it just $39 million of dead cap money on a $180 million salary cap, a hard cap in the NFL. You just can't compete with that.
Not good math there. Joe Lazito is watching on Long Island. He says, please make Ian a regular guest. He's fantastic. So there you go, Ian. Some love
Joe.
From the East Coast.
How's Barzell doing out? How's Barzell doing out there on the Long Island, huh?
How do you think he's doing? Have you seen the highlights, which incidentally ESPN's finally rolling NHL highlights every night? Let's go. Yes, and 2 of that. We got 3 minutes left. The Seattle Kraken. Okay. What's the buzz in the Emerald City?
There's a lot. When they first came up with the idea to rebuild, and I'm not sure if you ever went to the Coliseum, Rod, the old building, which was next to the arena. It held like 12,000. They renovated that in 94. It was just a disaster from the start. This group comes in, Oakview Group, Todd Leiweke, Tim Leiweke. They decided to rebuild this building and say, we're going to bring the hockey team here. And they put season tickets on sale 3 years ago. They sold 30,000 over the course of an hour. They sold 12,000 in 12 minutes. It was remarkable. And that was with a deposit. The buzz hasn't slowed down. They're excited. Thankfully, they're not starting till this fall. Originally, they were going to start in 2020, but they're going to start this fall. There's a lot of buzz. We're excited. We do a daily. I mean, listen, you're probably not surprised to know that I do a daily hockey segment on my radio show in Seattle, of all places. But we're jacked. We're ready to go. And I think the proximity to the border helps us. And I think that there's a misperception around really hockey, and even in our own city. there are a lot of hockey fans here, a lot of people from, that have crossed the border, and a lot of us grew up watching CBC Hockey Night in Canada. That was our first cable television in Seattle. So there's a lot of buzz. We're excited. We just kind of have to sit back and wait and see. And thankfully, it looks like the entry draft will take place on time, too.
Sounds like it. We have our Kraken insider, the great Ian Furness from KJR Seattle. Ian, man, it's been far too long, but thanks for obliging our request, and stay safe there, and let's keep in touch, my man.
Hey, Rod, you guys, anytime you want me on, I'd love to do it. Just you got now, unfortunately, you have all my contact information. I can't hide from you. So
that's right. You're right. We got you. Thanks, Ian.
Anytime. Take care.
All right, Ian Furness from KJR Seattle, one of the greatest sports talk stations in America. I'm telling you that. A guy that we go back a real long ways, and obviously just a super dude.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.